We'll now call this regular meeting of the Jacksonville City Council to order. I want to welcome everyone who's in the audience tonight, who's attended the meeting, also those who will be watching the meeting on G10 television. We're going to begin by rising for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by our City Attorney, John Carter. Councilman Ward will be leading the pledge.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Heavenly Father, we pause again to give you thanks. To give you thanks for this day, to give you thanks for the privilege and benefit of living in the city of Jacksonville and all the blessings that you bestow upon us corporately and individually. We have now entered into another full hurricane season. We pray, Heavenly Father, that through your providence, that you would keep us safe, especially this fragile coastal area that we call home, and that you would protect and defend us from hurricanes and storms. We pray for our military who are serving us here and around the world, for their safety and for their anxious families. And as always, we pray for our mayor and we pray for our council. All this we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Council, this time I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting with the addition of one item under the regular agenda here. It'll be 6A, and this will be dealing with our city manager.
Move approval with the additional information with regards to the hiring of the city manager.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Next, we have our first section of public comment for this evening, and notice that no one has signed up for public comment, so we're going to move right along. Council, we have minutes from the August 3rd, 2022 workshop meeting and 3 consent items on the agenda.
Move approval for the minutes for the workshop meeting and the 3 consent items as presented.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. That'll bring us to item number 4 on the agenda. This is a public hearing, and this is for Crestfield Park Apartments. It's a 13.22 acre tract, and Mr. Massey will be presenting this item.
Mayor and Council, on behalf of East Point Homes, Tidewater Associates has submitted a petition for the annexation of a 13.22 acre tract that is not contiguous to the current city limits boundaries. The property is located off Blue Creek School Road and Spring Villa Drive. The developer proposes to build 72 multifamily homes. The financial analysis shows a positive cash flow over the 5-year review period of $870,000. Staff recommends that council adopt the annexation ordinance as presented.
Any questions of Mr. Massey? Thank you, Ron. At this time, I'll recess the regular council meeting, open up the required public hearing on this matter. Anyone present wishes to speak to this issue? Seeing no takers, I'm going to close the public hearing and reconvene the regular meeting, and you're being asked to consider the annexation ordinance.
Mayor Phillips, I make the recommendation that council adopts the annexation ordinance for Crestfield View Apartments as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Thank you, sir. Next, we have item number 5. This is annexation. This is annexation for the Stroud property, which is a 22.25 acre tract. And Mr. Massey will be presenting this item.
Mayor and Council, on behalf of Lee Stroud, Tidewater Associates Incorporated, has submitted a petition for an annexation of a 22.25 acre tract that is not contiguous to the current city limit boundaries. The property is located off Burgaw Highway near Bratton Drive. The developer proposes to build 130 multifamily homes. The financial analysis shows a positive cash flow over the 5-year period of $1.99 million. Staff recommends the council adopt the annexation ordinance as presented.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Massey on this item? Thank you. I'm going to recess the regular council meeting, open up the public hearing that's required on this matter. Anyone present wishes to speak to this issue? No one. I'll close the public hearing. Council, you're being asked to consider the annexation ordinance.
Mayor Phillips, I make the motion that council adopts the annexation of the Stroud property as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Next is item number 6, and this is a public hearing on the Unified Development Ordinance Text Amendment, or amendment to Articles 4.2, Use-Specific Standards, Part C, Public and Institutional Uses, and 9.4 Definitions. And Jeremy Smith, our senior planner, will be presenting this item. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As stated, this is a proposed Unified Development Text Amendment. It was submitted by several Bryn Mawr area residents along the Huff and Carriage Drive area. The issue at hand is they were concerned about the Jacksonville Treatment Center recently relocating to 291 Huff Drive. The Jacksonville Treatment Center went there because under our Unified Development Ordinance, they fall under medical clinic, and the property is zoned office and institutional, thereby it's an allowed use. One of the primary concerns is that it provides outpatient drug treatment services in the form of predominantly methadone. Their proposed amendment, as I said, the Jacksonville Treatment Center falls under medical clinic, again, which is a permitted use in the O&I district. Their proposed amendment is to add spacing requirements to drug and alcohol treatment facilities and amend the definition of drug and alcohol treatment facility to include outpatient treatment. Thereby, that would take a clinic such as Jacksonville Treatment Center and put it within drug treatment facility if that change was made. However, staff has investigated and found that a federal appeals court in a decision with the New Directions Treatment Services in the city of Reading found that cities and counties cannot make a distinction between a drug treatment facility such as Jacksonville Treatment Center and a standard medical clinic. They have to be treated the same. If this amendment as proposed was approved, it could put the city at risk for lawsuit. At its July 11th Planning Board meeting, the Planning Advisory Board unanimously recommended denial along with staff of this proposed amendment. I do know that there are representatives of the area that would like to speak, but staff is recommending that council deny this request.
Any questions of Mr. Smith? So you're saying that basically the law says that we can make no distinction.
Correct. Between a outpatient drug facility such as this, it cannot be differentiated from a medical clinic. So it would be treated the same as a doctor's, eye care, dental, normal physician's office, anything like that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Smith? At this time, I'm going to open up the required public hearing on this matter. I believe we have some folks that want to speak on this matter. Please, if you would, please state your name and address for the clerk.
Hi, sorry, I'm nervous. I'm Janice Morton. I own the property at 211 Bethesda Court, which is actually 3 houses down from the treatment center. So I understand the position of not, that there's legal issues with this, but I just wanted to voice our concerns and why we brought this before you. So can I just read something? Do I have a couple minutes? Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to voice our opinion regarding the proposed text amendment. This text amendment proposes a change that will establish certain parameters for the location of drug treatment facilities. While there are certain regulations in place for drug treatment facilities, there is currently no regulation in place that addresses this specific facility's location unless they are an overnight drug treatment facility. I would suggest that in our opinion, there is essentially no distinction between the patient that is staying overnight at a drug treatment facility and the patient who visits a drug treatment facility during the day. All drug treatment facilities, regardless of their hours of operation, bring patients battling addiction into one or more areas of our community in order to provide treatment. While I understand there is a need for these facilities, I do believe that there should be an effort to protect the most vulnerable in our society, our young and older populations. A drug treatment facility recently opened its doors in very close proximity to residential housing and an assisted living facility. The elementary school bus stop had to be relocated because the bus stop was located on the corner of this clinic's location. As community members, we see this as a potential issue, and with no current location parameters in place, the opportunity exists for these kinds of facilities to relocate into close proximity to other residential neighborhoods and assisted living facilities, i.e., there's a stretch along Henderson Drive where there's residential backed up to those kind of areas that are zoned for that. We have reservations about patients being treated in close proximity to where our children live and play, where they attend school, where they go to daycare, where their guardians are at, and where older residents reside in assisted living facilities. The proposed amendment is designed to set parameters similar to location restrictions placed on adult businesses, bars, etc. They simply state that regardless of their hours, they must not be located within a certain distance of daycares, parks, senior living facilities, schools, housing, etc. These are places where our most vulnerable live, work, and play. The goal is to provide a safe place for the most vulnerable in our communities while also providing treatment for those who are battling addiction. We do believe that you can do both, and this text amendment will help regulate where these facilities can be located within our city. That's all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions of Ms. Morton? Yes. Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak on this matter? Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing on this matter then, and we're going to go back to council, and we're going to say that they're requesting that we...
Mr. Mayor, could I say?
Yes,
On
please.
page 3 of your agenda is my legal opinion, which is part of the record. I won't read it into the record, but Mr. Smith has summarized it very clearly. I do want to say to Ms. Morton, I think there's a lot of empathy with her cause. I think we all feel for her and for the community. But many of you have sat here when we dealt with Oxford houses, and they're out there in your community where you have about 4 to 6 former addicts who live together and in support of each other try to keep each other clean. And they are allowed by law, and they exist, and hopefully you don't even know that they're your neighbor. But again, the federal law is the federal law, and I do believe that to approve this would be to put the city in legal jeopardy of a suit. Now, certainly this particular treatment center is grandfathered in. It is what it is. And I know these folks are more concerned with what may come in the future. But again, I think that it would be a bad precedent to set this law. I think it's in violation of this ordinance because it's a violation of federal law. I'd be glad to answer any questions. But I do want them to know that we understand and we're empathetic to their cause. But again, the law is the law. Thank you.
Mr. Carter, also, I do believe that if we were to violate these individuals within the community, that according to the American Disability Act, it will be viewed as discriminatory practices because of the fact that the drug alcohol abuse individuals could be deemed as, it can be deemed as a disability.
Absolutely. And in fact, the case that Mr. Smith, it's this new erections case versus City of Reading, Pennsylvania, but it is based upon, and I'll read it to you, this one line. The Federal Appeals Court struck down methadone clinic location-based restrictions, holding that, quote, that a law that singles out methadone clinics for different zoning procedures is fatally discriminatory under the ADA or Americans with Disability Act, end quote. But you're exactly right, Dr.
And
White.
that daycare that's on Huff Drive is beyond the 800 feet parameter.
I'm not sure about that. I don't know about that at all.
I do believe in 6A, under the specific standards, a drug alcohol treatment facility should not be located within 800 feet of a residential zoning district, senior living center, a school, a daycare facility, so.
That's what they're asking for. We're saying that you should deny that request.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
It's not within it, okay.
Yeah. I understand where they're coming from, I really do. And, you know, I wish there was something we could do, but, you know, I mean, we could approve this thing, but the first time it's challenged, we're in court.
Yep.
And the city taxpayers are responsible for paying the legal fees and pursuing this thing, so I just don't see that we have any relief here for those residents. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's the way it looks, so. Go ahead.
So I sit on the planning board, and we talked in length about this at our last meeting, and everyone on the planning board and here, I think, feel the same, that we do feel very bad about the situation, but, I mean, going with that legal issue, I don't think we really can prove it, and we spoke a long time about that at the planning board the other, last meeting about that, and that was a big topic. So I want you to know that we do care about it, we do understand where you're coming from, but like everyone said, I just don't see how we could go against the federal ruling, so.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that given that the action proposed would violate federal law and is not legally defensible under current state and federal laws, that we will deny the request to modify the UDO and language as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion fails to carry. The request fails to carry. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have 6A. That's the included item here, and Mr. Carter is going to present this. This is employment agreement and budget amendment to hire Joshua W. Ray as the Jacksonville City Manager. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, members of council. Excuse me. I went to Walmart Saturday morning. As soon as I walk in the door, someone walks up to me and says, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the mayor and council for your service. I said, well, thank you. I will make sure that the mayor and council see that. So you're being watched this evening, whether on G10 or on Facebook or whatever. People are interested in it. And there's a purpose for me saying that, not only to tell you that this particular person, and I wish I'd gotten his name, did say that, but I wanted to tell you that because I want to take a few moments here before I get into the action items. And I would like to go over how you, as the mayor and council, got to this point this evening, because it's very important, I think, for the staff, for the public to understand the process. Okay, talk about names of applicants and so forth, but we can certainly share with them the process that the mayor and council went through. I'd also like to acknowledge that Mr. Bittner's not here this evening, but Mr. Bittner knows that this is on the agenda, and he's 100% in favor of you taking action to approve the two agenda items that are before you. So let me begin by going back to May 23rd, 2022. That was the day Dr. Woodruff retired. But before that, you as a council engaged a company known as Mercer Group Associates to assist you in this search. And before Dr. Woodruff ever retired, you met with them and you did two things that are important, real things. Number one, you came up with this brochure. And if anyone hasn't seen it, they ought to read it. It's a great brochure on the city of Jacksonville, got wonderful pictures and so forth, and I'm going to refer back to it because in this brochure you said, these are our qualifications. This is what we're looking for in the next city manager. The other thing you did was you set a schedule. You adopted a schedule so that you knew you would be available to meet, especially on 2 dates that I will mention here in just a moment, and you all came together. No one was absent, everyone was present, and this was very important to move the process along. The first meeting that occurred was on July the 12th. The mayor and council met after, let me go back, in June 27th, I believe it's right here in the brochure, June 27th was the deadline that the applicants had to, June 27th at 5 o'clock, had to make applications. So on July the 12th, the mayor and council, for 3 hours, from 5 o'clock to about 8 o'clock, met in a closed session and reviewed 32 to 33, is my recollection, applicants. I think the mayor and council were very pleased with having that many applicants. And what the Mercer Group had done prior to that was they had gone through them and they had looked at your minimum qualifications and said, do these folks fit in there? And from that, they came up with 10 that they felt like had met those qualifications, and y'all should give further thought and process to, even though you were certainly able to look at any of the 32 or 33 applicants. And those 10 actually did a 3-minute video. They did a 3-minute video, and my recollection was they answered 2 questions. 1, why do you want to become the city manager of the city of Jacksonville? And 2, what do you see as the challenges, and what do you see as the possibilities of moving forward? And from that discussion, the mayor and council of those 10 decided on 6 that you had wanted to interview at the next date that you had put on your schedule, which was August 12th. And that was last Friday, and y'all met in session from 8 o'clock to close to 5 o'clock. And what happened in the interim of that month? Well, of those 6, 1 found a job. And I want to talk about that for a moment because I think it's important to understand. I kind of knew this, maybe you just learned this, but 12 years as a city manager is not the norm. It's the exception. We're praying, we're believing that if you take the action you take tonight, you're hiring an exception. But again, that's not always been the case. Mr. Bittner was an exception. We looked at it today. He was here about 12 years. But then you had Mr. Moore, 2 years. Mr. Hagan was here, of course, 5 years as city manager, of course, head of recreation before that. And Mr. Bauer was here 3 years. But we learned from the group, that is the Mercer Group, that the normal time for a city manager is 3 to 5 years. Now, again, we're hoping and praying for an exception because, as I've already told you, I've been down this road a few times, and sometimes you'd like to just bring it together. Maybe if we can get somebody for another decade, maybe someone else can go down the road with you. But anyway, I think it's important to understand that this is not an easy job. I'll never forget, and the council, I think, has heard this, but I'll repeat it. I'd like to hear it myself again. When before I came down here 20 years ago as your full-time city attorney, I was the city attorney contract, and I was also contract city, attorney for the community college. And Jim Strickland, Superior Court judge, sat on that. And he said this to me, John, when I got hired there, and I think it really was applicable to me there, but it's also most applicable to city managers. He said, John, you don't drive the train, you don't ride on the train, but if the train gets off the tracks, John, you're the one they're going to blame. Well, there's a lot of truth in that. Managers especially, and what they believe they're following the council's direction goes here. Council kind of understands later on that maybe the community's not ready to go quite there yet. But anyway, there comes a meeting of the minds that it's better for them to separate. Or if there's not a meeting of the minds, then they are separated by the council action. It's not an easy job. But again, it's a job that is challenging. Tonight, before you on your agenda is a task that you asked me to work on, and I did over the weekend with the Ellis, I keep Ellis Hankins as part of the Mercer Group, with Ellis and Lisa Ward, the 2 principals in that group. And we have, I believe, complied with the council's directive. At the end of the meeting, after you had interviewed all 5 candidates, there was clearly a consensus that 1 met your minimum qualifications. And I'll go over those with you here. 1 is you wanted a person who had a bachelor's degree or preferably a master's degree. This particular person, who you have the contract, has a bachelor's degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. We have to acknowledge that, don't we, Mr. Warden? And then got his master's degree as the top of the class from Western Carolina University. The second thing, you wanted a person who had 7 years of progressively responsible experience. This person has 20 years of responsible work as far as in management and so forth. And the last one is you preferred someone with ICMA credentials. This person is ICMA credentialed. And for the public, I'd like to just say what that means. ICMA stands for the International City County Management Association. It is, according to their website, and it's an organization that advances professional level government leadership, management, innovation, and ethics. This person meets that criteria and has that certification also. Again, at the end, you asked me to go and to work through the Mercer Group and to see if this individual would come to work for you for $185,000 a year. As you recall, you advertised at that as the beginning salary in your brochure that I'm holding here. I'm here to tell you tonight that before you is an agreement where the person is willing, and his name is Joshua W. Ray, Josh Ray. He is willing to come and to be your city manager for $185,000 per year. He is from Shelbyville, Tennessee. And Lisa, you can put his picture up there if you want to now. He clearly, I think, and council may want to make some remarks, but what stood out to me was, number one, high energy. High energy. Number two, he had done extensive homework on the challenges as well as the opportunities for this community and the city of Jacksonville in the coming years. He had reviewed meetings, he had studied, and he was ready for the test. And y'all gave him the test. And again, he had high energy. I want to repeat that because there was a lot of high energy. He's ready to go to work and so forth. He is committed through this contract, which you have in front of your signed contract, to be available to come down on September the 12th. He is ready to go to work. I'll go ahead, Lisa, to the next photo. He is married. There's his wife on the right, and he's got 3 daughters. And I'll tell you a little bit that I know. And however I pronounce these, they all start with a K. Okay, remember that. Kinsley, Cadence, and Cambry. He has one daughter who's just, as I understand it, graduated from high school and will be staying in the Shelbyville, Tennessee area, which is really a little ways down from Nashville. If you've looked at the map, that's where Shelbyville is. He has then the middle daughter, who will become a junior at one of our city high schools. And then the youngest daughter will be in the 4th grade, just like my granddaughter Caroline will be in the 4th grade. So this is his family. He is energetic and ready. You also have attached, besides the agreement, is a budget amendment. The budget amendment, of course, covers things such as the moving cost. There is a difference between his salary and Dr. Woodruff's salary, so that's what the budget amendment covers. Ron has been working with the IT staff to look at the cost of 2 monitors, a laptop, that's right, laptop that'll be hooked up, and his phone and so forth. So all of this is an estimate there, so that's why the budget amendment is needed. I'll be glad to try to answer questions, but again, I'm sure Mayor and Council know as much as I know because you sat through the interviews, but I can just tell you I'm optimistic, I'm committed. I want him to be here 10 years. And I think he's really wants to be here 10 years because he's indicated he wanted to get that young 4th grader out of high school while he's in Jacksonville. Thank you.
Council, we need a motion to approve the attached employment agreement and the budget amendment to hire Joshua W. Ray as city manager of Jacksonville. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. So we have a new manager.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So it'll be here on the 12th is the start date? Okay.
I think Mr. Carter said high energy. So get ready.
I think that's an understatement.
Get ready.
Anyway, we're going to go ahead and take a recess here and reconvene in A and B for some workshop topics. I want to thank everyone who came to the meeting tonight. Go home, drive safely going home. So we got a couple, we have to be in session here for this part of the meeting. We have a couple of items on here, and they're items that we
I
can,
think they have to do a countdown.
They did.
They did do it, yeah.
I didn't see it, sorry.
they can, we can take action on if necessary. Says, Bonnie, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Thank you, sir. First item, we're going to talk about Fire Station 4. As you know, the city sold current Station 4 to the county, so we've got to find a new home. And we're in the process of designing the new station, so we've asked Fire Chief T. Tallman to give council an update on the status of that effort.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing me to sit before you tonight and talk about where we're at in the current design process for the new Station 4, some cost estimates we've gotten, and some guidance moving forward. For those at the table and those watching at home, currently at Station 4, this is just a refresher. It's at 100 Firehouse Road in the Commons. We typically staff 4 to 5 personnel there with 2 apparatus, a quint and a squad. Also, this is where our hazmat trailer is located and our hazmat team. We try to staff this with our hazmat technician level personnel. The current challenges at Station 4, one is the location. It's kind of tucked back in that neighborhood. There's limited ways out of the commons, and traffic is picked up in that area. Another thing we talked about and discussed was the health and safety of that station. There were modifications and improvements made, but the bedrooms are right there off the bay, the same place that those trucks crank up, going in and out on a constant basis. It's exposed to the elements a lot, vermin, animals, everything, being right by the fields and the woods. It's also space limited. If you notice in some of the pictures that we showed, we have to do storage on top of the offices. The workout equipment is right there in the bay between the trucks, storing all kinds of extra equipment there. With it being our hazmat station too, we have to store those extra supplies there as well. It's also a shared facility. We operate out of 2 bays, the offices, bedrooms, kitchen, everything right there together. And we share a bay with Onslow County EMS. Challenges for the sale. I noticed about challenges from Station 4, but opportunity came knocking. The county came to us back in the late summer, early fall, and approached us about buying Station 4 as part of their EOC expansion process. Challenges from the sale, they wanted us out quick. They gave a timeline of October of 2023 to have us out so they can move forward with their plans and construction. So that leaves us limited time for our design and our construction. Also, in this current work environment, the lead time for supplies and contractors is tough. Labor's short. Ever since the pandemic, supplies have been at a minimum, almost not at all. We're dealing with this right now is the tremendous inflation that's going on. And also the volatile construction and material market. Like I said, the supplies are hard to come by, the labor's hard to come by, the fluctuating costs, fluctuating supplies, it's been a challenge. And then there's the possibility of a temporary fire station for us. That timeline's tight. We'll be in October of 2022 in just 2 months. We began planning for a temporary station, and that's going to factor on several things. One of them is the best provide for the safety and the services for the city of Jacksonville. Also, it's going to be the time frame of how long we're expected to be in there. Another thing is the added cost. And we've even talked with planning and permitting, what will be some of the challenges for the different things that we're exploring about moving into a temporary station. Based on the time frame that we may be, we can talk to the county, maybe get an extension on the move out date, or we can distribute those personnel and equipment to other stations or locations like we've done in the past. And also we've talked about, I've worked with Public Services, I've worked with Ryan and his division about establishing a temporary station in the district. So, we had it in the past. When we were building the current Station 4, it was back there behind Big Lots. I actually went back there and checked with Streets, Kelly Cannon, and the infrastructure from where the old station was there is still in place. So it's still got the water, the sewer, the power. So there's opportunities there. I've also been in discussion with the property owners and they would be willing to, lease those parcels back out to the city. An essential structure. The code defines it as any facility that's supposed to remain operational during any kind of extreme environmental conditions. The fire department, we're 365 days, 7 days a week, we never close. We're expected to operate in those environmental conditions. So we have to build a robust station that can provide those services during those essential circumstances. As you can see, these probably weren't essential structures, and they're heavily damaged. That's also where we keep our people, that's where they live and work, and that's where we store our equipment. So we sat down with our new Station 4 goals. We wanted to meet the current and future needs of the department. We talk about that 50-year facility. That district's growing. We want to be able to meet the demand for service. And also we want to meet the demands of the fire department. The services that we'll provide in the future and the growth that we're expected with the fire department. We want to improve those health and safety concerns for our personnel. The cancer initiatives have been very big. The calls and the environments that these men and women are dealing with on a daily basis, we're worried about their health and safety. We want to get them out of those bays where we only store the trucks, we only store the gear, and we can get them in rooms where they're away from those kind of things. We also want to improve our turnout response times. We want to have those clear paths to the trucks. That's a safety factor. It also is a speed factor. And this new location actually gets us out close to Western Boulevard and takes advantage of the new parkway that's supposed to be coming through. Address accreditation recommendations about the current Station 4. I basically covered those in the last bullet points from our last accreditation site visit recommendation. And another thing they mentioned was to get that workout equipment off the bay floor and into a room inside a building. And then the other thing is the quick turnaround date, quick turnaround due to the move out date. The timeline, Davis Kane was hired as the architect. The city accepted the offer from the county and we closed on the 30th of June of this year. And once again, that condition of sale was to be out by October of 2023. We are now at the 60% estimate completed. If we're allowed to move forward, or we talk about moving forward, we are estimating the 100% estimate done by the end of September, which will give the final estimated cost. Hopefully go out to bid by the beginning of October, and then groundbreaking, or as Nick likes to call it, the golden shovels, estimated in the beginning of December. And then we're expecting a 12 to 14 months construction time. The architecture and engineering, we took advantage of some city-owned land on Marketplace Drive. We wanted to take advantage of that, the location to Western Boulevard, those gateways out, and also the advantage of the future parkway extension. And then we wanted to use current Station 2 as a model. We've been in Station 2 for 6 years. I believe it's served the citizens of Jacksonville well. It's served our department well. So it seemed like a model station to use. We got modifications based on our experience with the current Station 2 and the department input from the people that live and work in this facility every day. One of the things we talked about was an extra bunk and bathroom. As you remember from the current Station 4, they sleep in a common area. They share beds on different shifts. And this has really been a struggle through the pandemic. We want to lengthen the apparatus bays to accommodate any department apparatus. Currently at Station 2, we can't fit our ladder truck in there if we need to. We're hopefully in the future, we have in the budget, we've talked about maybe purchasing another ladder truck. We got goals to keep our current one as a backup in the future, which will help with ISO and maintenance. Gym and the day room size modifications, if any of y'all have been in Station 2, there's a lot of extra room in that day room. We'd rather utilize it a little bit more to make the gym bigger so they have a safer area to work out. And then the expansion of the decontamination capabilities for our personnel. Once again, I said this is our hazmat station, but dealing with the pandemic, one of the things that we've laid out in this design was a Decon shower and bathroom actually in the bay. we're dealing with several cases a year where our personnel are exposed to bed bugs. So in those circumstances, they have to strip outside of the station, take their clothes off, wash their clothes in the turnout gear dryer, go immediately in and take showers. So there's other things that just fires and hazmat that they're dealing with on a routine basis. And then the more storage for capabilities for our hazmat, and this is all the station where we store our extra turnout gear. As everybody knows, that stuff's very expensive. We want to kind of keep it out of the elements. That tends to wear on it faster as we're storing it. I hope y'all can see this, but this is the current proposed layout of the new Station 4. As you can see, most of the time you pick the lot, design the station. Well, we had the station and got the lot, so we kind of had to shoehorn it in here. You can see the stream at the top, the utility easement right behind it. Mr. Massey, if you can point right there. One of the things that we were looking to do was maybe tie into the current stormwater pond, or maybe do something with one place. Due to the site location, that's really not feasible. So we're actually going to have to put a stormwater pond on the site. Also, with the proposed parkway, the thing you see going up the middle, we're very close on our exits to the parkway and marketplace. It'll help with those response and turnout times. It also has a nice large apron where other trucks can come when they're station visits, and it has the opportunity for a bay in the future if needed. This is a rendering from the architect. You see it looks a lot like Station 2. But this would be the view looking from the parkway back towards the station, with one place to your right and marketplace to your left. The 60% design package and cost estimate, the architect firm was able to fulfill all of our requests. At the first 30% meeting, we were able to make some square footage reductions in the lobby area, which we thought was a little big. But we were able to make some square footage reduction, and all reasonable value engineering changes were made at that time. We got rid of some of the decorative brick. We changed the roof construction, the covering from metal roof to shingle roof. We went from metal siding to a hardy board type siding, which is all what current Station 2 has and is served as well. That the price is actually,
I've updated, there's another chart, I didn't get in and update this one. The price is a little bit higher than that. We'll talk about that when we get to that slide.
but from that 30 to 60%, we were able to cut about $1 million off the cost. And when we got the 60% estimate, it came back to the original cost. But that has to do with most of it with the site work. It's unsuitable soils, and due to the low level, it needs to be brought up about 12 inches. So it's about $800,000 in site work. And as we know in this environment, the materials and other costs continue to increase. The budgeting, we have 4.5 in the capital improvement plan, 4 million for construction and contingency, and roughly 500,000 for design. The estimated cost more is about $7.5 million from what we have above the 6.9 construction and contingency. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Keith,
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to recall that area out there. When your trucks go out of that station, can you put that slide back up again?
Yes, sir.
So they would go out the gateway and out?
No, sir, they would go out to Marketplace for the time being and then to Gateway. Gateway is right down there at the bottom.
Right.
And then we would actually have a turnout in the future with the Parkway extension, where we could come right out on the Parkway,
Okay.
which would help us better serve Carolina Forest, Ramsey Road.
But right now, over there on the marketplace, what I was thinking about was the traffic congestion that's already there.
Yes, sir.
How's that going to impact you?
It was still provide some challenges for us, but we still have those Opticon systems on the trucks that can change those signals, and that's a line of sight signal. So we actually get that coming off that road marketplace, more of a straight shot, which will allow that Opticon to operate faster. And then there's also some technology, Anthony, with some GPS stuff coming in the future.
Of course, the real benefit comes from the parkway coming through.
Right.
Because when the parkway goes through, one, it's gonna replace Gateway. And so you'll be able to, get on the parkway and like I said, with OpCon there, you'll be able to go through the signal without even stopping in that. The other thing with the parkway is up here, the parkway is gonna connect to an extension of Henderson. So you'll be able to get to Henderson, in a different way than you go now. And the other thing, of course, with the parkway is it's gonna go all the way up to Ramsey Road, and it gets you into the backside of Carolina Forest a lot quicker than the way they have to go now. And that, so there'll be a lot of response advantages to this location. It's not gonna happen immediately, but the Jacksonville Parkway project is really a 2025 project, so it's not that far off. So
What did we pay, what did we end up paying for station number 2?
it's about $3 million.
That was 6 years ago, right?
So we've been in it for 6 years, so it's been about 8 years ago.
And that was tough. That was tight. That $3 million, and that, in other words, that was
Does that cost like outfitting it and everything too, or is that?
right now these costs do not include.
Is this strictly construction? This is nothing. So there's gonna be additional cost by moving in and all that stuff.
Now, we're taking everything that we possibly can from the current Station 4 and utilizing what we can out of it.
Gotcha.
I mean, we'll end up with an amendment to the CIP. This is the current estimates now. We're not amending it now until we actually get to the point where we are getting ready to award the contract. Then we'll know what the actual construction cost is, and we'll then look at what additional equipment will need to be purchased to completely outfit the station.
Sorry. Yeah. Does that time frame seem realistic, getting it done? I mean, I feel like it's kind of a stretch.
It's going to be tight.
So,
This firm we're working with has built a lot of Raleigh fire stations, and they've had nothing but excellent experience with them.
Well, I hope we can get it done on time, because part of the money is being held based on vacating the current fire station, $2.5 million, or $250,000
Yes, sir.
for that $1 million.
Unless something changes, you won't be able to build this in 12 to 14 months.
yeah, I think I agree with this
Under
board
the
on that.
current situation, they're not, every project is way over time.
Chief Tellman, where is that other site that you indicated that could possibly be the temporary fire station if the county doesn't allow you to remain in the current firehouse?
One of them we've looked at is behind Big Lots in Dick's Sporting Goods. Back behind it is a great big parking lot with a big metal building. That's
You
where.
staged there before.
Yes, ma'am. So, yes, sir.
Is there indoor area? I thought it was just like covered, I thought it was the whole lumberyard load. I mean, there's like.
We did. We parked the truck in there and we moved some temporary trailers onto the site.
Lived in the trailers.
Yeah, I see.
Oh.
Okay, I'm sorry. There you go.
Yeah.
That's why I was
So
like.
you like
explain
living
it
in,
well
so you
enough.
live in, not like in a van down by the river, but you living in a parking lot in a trailer?
Yes, ma'am.
They're tailgating.
Yeah, we called it the T-Bone Deluxe.
So again, the money that's going to be used to pay for this, can you elaborate on that one more time for us here?
Well, I mean, one of the opportunities, I mean, we do have, this year, when we approved the CIP, we put about $2.5 million of general fund money in the project. What we had also have in the project is the money that was left from the bond for the public safety building in Station 2. We had about $900,000, so that's in the CIP budget right now. The $1 million from the sale of the current Station 4 is in there. So there is, about $4 million that's not been spent. We've obviously, that paid for the design out of that 4.5. So that's $370-some thousand. So there's about $4 million there right now. The county, added is planning on using 3 cents of their property tax receipts for fire district. And under that concept, since everybody in the county is gonna pay that 3 cents, they're gonna give the city, because we provide our fire coverage, the equivalent of our 3 cents, so that's about $1.3 million in that. Now, don't know how long that will continue, but we know we'll get $1.3 million this year. More than likely, will probably still be in effect next year. So, that's one way to to fund that additional expense. We certainly, have the reserve. You can come out of the reserve. You can also commit like we did to Jack Grant, although we've got commitments to pay back from the capital reserve to the general fund balance. But, there's different options like that, combinations of.
The state budget?
That's right. We have forgot about that. There's $1.2 million that Senator Lazar got put in the budget. So that actually reduces that delta that we're short to about $2 million. So I think the simple thing right now would probably be just bank on 2 years of that 3 cent fire district tax and fund it, at least plan to fund it that way to start with.
We knew it would be challenging, but when the council made the decision to sell the other property, we locked ourselves into the situation of having to deal with the current climate and construction costs and we must move forward on a timeline. So there's really, it's a matter of how, not if, just how to allocate the funding.
Chief Talman, is the temporary fire station that we had in Williamsburg Plantation, that's no longer available, correct?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
And that really wasn't the place where you could put
Right.
the engines. We just had a rescue, a squad truck there. And that was just before we had Station 2 out in that area. That gave us a little bit better coverage.
I know there's no way to know for sure because it literally is mystery meat at this point, but if they're saying, roughly 12 to 14 months, which we know it will be longer than that, I would be hopeful that it's not too much longer than that. So whatever the situation is, whether it's a temporary station or it's spread out amongst others, your crews and your folks are not left in limbo too long. We want that to be as brief as possible. Clearly, there's no way to know exactly what that would be. Do you have a gut check feeling of how many months that might extend to, or is it just clearly, absolutely no way to know?
See, I think one of the considerations we're gonna have when we go out to bid is how long we ask. Because the shorter we ask,
The higher the cost.
that's right. So we're gonna have to, have some flexibility in that. And so we're probably gonna need to be looking seriously at how we're gonna operate temporarily.
What is the estimated cost to operate temporary for a while? I mean, is there any?
I have not figured this out yet.
Gotcha.
But that's something we'll have to work on that that's a parallel planning effort here as we go.
Maybe the property owner over there will be a good citizen. What do you think?
Planning and permitting requirements.
Yeah.
We'll look at every option we can.
Well, then I guess, and talk to the county if they'll possibly extend, which is probably doubtful, I'm assuming, but it's always worse. The worst they're gonna tell you is no, I guess.
I guess one of the things is some of the same challenges that we have,
They're gonna have the same.
they're gonna have too. So I mean, I would say, talk to your county or your county commissioners to basically, encourage them to think about, what their schedule is and whether or not that October 23 is absolutely a mandatory time.
They gotta start. They can start. So however long they take, that it doesn't impact us. But our our delay, if we're not out by October, delays them. And so I don't know that that's, an option for us.
The money from the county for the fire tax, is that going to be specific use, or
It's basically
we really
intended
can't,
for fire.
we really can't spend that money yet, can we?
We really don't know anything, at least I don't. The last conversation I had with Mr. DeSelms was, this was prior to the budget being approved by the county, that he would do some kind of document and forward it to me to review. Now, Ron may have had some sense in.
I don't have, it's an agreement. I think that the expectation is we'll use it for fire, purposes, but that I don't think they'll restrict us from pulling back what would be some of the funding that we currently spend on fire and supplanting that money with this fire tax money.
And I think part of the reason we hadn't gotten anything, and Ron picked up on this in meeting with the county manager, is they don't expect to give you that until they receive it. So you're looking at it sometime next spring or whatever, after they collect their taxes.
right.
So we'll just mark that out.
We're not banking on that one.
Coming soon, to be announced.
Checks in the mail.
T, thanks for all the due diligence that has gone into the planning of this. I know to go back and make the cuts and the revisions that were made to try to make this fit the best possible. We appreciate that.
I'd really like to thank Nick and Randa and Wally. They've been a tremendous help on this.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the hard work.
That's it.
Okay, no
You
further
need us to do
questions?
anything? Everything good?
Yep. Go on to the next agenda
Just want
item.
us to bless it or anything?
Thank you. Thank you.
Continue to work and move forward.
Thank you for the presentation. We look forward to seeing you in the future.
The clock's ticking.
We'll continue to march, and if there's any additional guidance you want to give us, but I think we know where we need to go, and we'll just keep you abreast as we get further along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the next item is compensation. Of course, we've had at least 2 discussions on compensation. Again, some of the important things on what we previously discussed is one, that we did discuss a process for us evaluating how our compensation stands and how competitive we are, and also making sure that we're making pay adjustments in a consistent and equitable way. I mean, some of the things that we talked about is the fact that when we implemented this current compensation plan, it was intended that you look at both cost of living and look at employees gaining experience and then adjusting their pay based on gaining additional experience each year and certifications. Because we didn't implement that fully, we've got situations where there's compression, and that means if we only moved a current employee by cost of living on an annual basis, when we hired a new employee, the pay that new employee got was fairly close to what the pay that an employee with us for a year or two. And that's what contributed to compression. And it also doesn't pay the employee, based on their experience. So those are some of the things that we're trying to correct. And what we're going to talk about today is the methodology that HR developed to try and, one, improve our competitiveness to our other cities, to basically help adjust employees who didn't get some adjustments so their pay is equitable compared to their fellow employees, and to do something to spread the compression so we have more flexibility. When you hire an employee that maybe has more experience, you can place them in the pay scale appropriately. And so those are some of the tasks that we're trying to accomplish, and so I'll let Kimberly and Tom take you through some of the details. Go ahead.
Okay, so first I think you need to congratulate yourselves on a target, right? So we came to a decision that we wanted to measure ourselves against a peer cohort that gave reliable and validated data every year, so we can have this conversation every year. You also said you wanted to target the average of that peer cohort. So thank you, because it gave us something to target. So what am I going in the right direction?
The other way.
Other way. So, as you know, we decided that you voted on a adopted compensation strategy, and that is to utilize North Carolina League of Municipality salary data and target our peer cohort. Remember, we were looking at 2021 data. We will not get the 2022 data until November, so everything you will see will be against that data. We do know our peer cohort has moved anywhere from 5 to 15%, depending on that grouping, and we'll get to that down the road. What we're looking at right now, many of you have asked me, where do we go right now? What do we need to do today? So we want to congratulate you on that move. Our objective for this methodology, and I'm going to have Tom talk about the methodology, because there's no broad brush approach here, because we have used often some of the money that you've given us every year to target different select groups that were really significantly underpaid to our market. So there's no broad brush. It's not like, and I'm making up this percentage, so don't quote me, but it's not like everybody's going to get 10% or everybody's going to get 5%, everybody's going to get 2%. That's not how it would work. We need to make sure that there's an internal equity approach. And as Ron had said also, with a focus on compression. We want to make sure that we eliminate the compression that exists and then make sure it doesn't happen again. And most importantly, we're measuring ourselves against what you adopted, that compensation strategy, in order to have competitive pay. So we want to make sure we're competitive against our external market. We want to make sure we're not creating compression and eliminating what compression now that exists. And we have to keep an eye on internal equity. That sounds fairly simple, but you have to understand that takes an approach at looking at every one of these 600 employees. So Tom has come up with a methodology, and we've tested this, and actually I'm going to let him, since there's a lot of detail, explain what that looks like.
So basically what we ended up doing is we adjusted the pay scale by 10%, and this was necessary in order to make the adjustments that we needed for the folks that we have in position. When I initially started this, we put in, a couple of formulas, and there was just too many manual entries. We put this in, it would apply a certain percentage or a salary increase to an individual, and then we'd have to go back in and do manual adjustments. And we try to avoid doing that, because each time you do some kind of a manual adjustment, you're changing the equity piece of that. And so the goal is to have all of our salary adjustments be done solely mathematically. And so what we needed to do was adjust the pay scale by 10%. Then what we ended up doing is applying a certain percentage for each year an individual has had in position, and then an additional 0.5% for each year somebody has with the city. So what the percentage for each year in position does is it places the employee in that pay grade relative to how long they've been in that position. And the idea is that 0 at the bottom, and then 20 years at the top. But that didn't answer the question with the compression piece. So we added another formula or another multiple to that, which is the 0.5% for every year. And what that did for us was kind of widen that gap between, say, a 0-year employee and a 1-year employee, or so on and so forth. And that gave us fairly good results, with reasonable percentages between individuals with different times in grade and as well as in service. Then we took all of those results and we evaluated that and compared it to our peer cohort to see how we impacted that. Did we move closer? Are we above the market? Are we below it? And then how can we adjust it? And then each time we needed to make an adjustment to get closer to market, we changed our formulas. So there is a handful of employees that are estimated to get a 0 increase, and then there's employees that are estimated to get a certain percentage to get them right in their position. And that is as a result of studies that we've done in the past and adjustments that we've had. So a lot of these adjustments are adjusting folks that have not been adjusted in the recent years.
Yeah, see, Tom's point about this, the people that might not get much of a pay increase is because they were part of a group that we previously looked at and made salary adjustments with some of those funds that were in that annual, the annual budget. And that's where not all those groups got looked at. And that's where the equity or the lack of equity occurred.
But the good news is, in selecting the market that you decided on, we can actually look at each one of those positions, because that was your goal, right? Was to get it to market average. Okay.
All right. So then the impact of that is we've dramatically improved the average salary. We've corrected internal equity. We've reduced compression about as far as we can go. And then it does, the results of this meets the adopted strategy for 2021 data. And really what this does for us is it really sets employee salaries so that we can respond more resiliently in the future, to possible moves of our salary market.
I have a question. I want to fast forward into the future. How many years does an employee has to work full-time before they're invested in the city?
5 years.
Invested in the city?
Invested
Basically in the state, and for retirement. 5 years. And what is what is those 5 years based on your 5 highest salaries?
Well, now you're talking about computing the retired pay. It's the last 3, is it?
Your last 3 highest, last 4?
It's your last.
It doesn't matter.
It's the highest 4 consecutive. So
Highest
it
4
might not be your
consecutive.
last.
Okay. And what does the city contribute to the employee's retirement?
That's gone up significantly now. Gail, you remember where we are now?
That's 12 and 13, I think 12 for the regular employees and 13 for police.
Yeah, that's gone up, and over the past 4 years, we've had, an increase each year, and that's based on the state's actuarial studies, and so, they say they were done at this point, but not knowing where their investments are and things like that, you don't know what will come for the future.
You said
Right.
I'm sorry, the police gets higher than everyone else. Is that a state law?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. And that they also get a higher contribution in their 401k.
So we did an analysis recently
State
on the
law.
401k, and that's something that we've brought to the city manager's office attention, that something we'll have to look at in the future. We didn't think this was the year to address that, given the amount of money it's going to take to fix this, but we looked at our peer cohorts, and the majority of our competition is paying, 5% into 401k, where we do 2%, except for our police department, we give 5. We match 5.
That may look like a big scary number, but to be perfectly frank, I expected it to be north of 3 million easy.
So we did look at what that would look like if the market moved, which we know they did. We don't have that data, we know they did, and that is a big scary number. So we have to get there.
But what we want to make sure we step through a little bit so that you can look at some of the impact of some of the positions on some of the pay for some of the employees and some of the positions, because to me, okay, the methodology gave us a number, what's the estimate? Okay, now what does that look like from an employee perspective? And how does that compare, to the market?
So Ron had sent out a memo with those 2 charts attached, and we thought that could generate some conversation. Tom had pointed out to you previously when he showed you a maintenance worker 1 and where they sat on the scale, and explained that that was unique in that all of them were new, right? So because with our career development plan, they've been able to move to pay maintenance workers 2s and then maintenance workers 3s, and these are because of our excessive turnover of recent, they're new in position. So although it looks like they're underpaid to market, they're actually right where they should be right now because they haven't, as we said, reached that point that they're fully trained and productive in the role. So that's why you kind of have to take a look at each of the departments, each of the groups in the department, and then honestly, each of the individuals in those positions. So when we sent you those charts, we thought that might generate some conversation. We're happy to go. We have a couple slides if you want to go over some of those positions. We picked a few key positions if you want to. Many of you had said, we don't want so much information. We really want to know what's the number. So we want to do what you want. So we're happy to discuss positions. This is.
That's not all the ones that you have in the paper. There's more in the paper. But we just want to be able to answer questions. You see some of this, you see where we fall out, where we were, previously, where we are now.
So for example, the example I just gave you, the maintenance worker one, you can see that even after this, if this was approved, this investment into their salaries, they'd still be under market by 11%, but that's because they're brand new. So it makes sense. So it's not like you could take a broad brush and look at this, right? You have to, because I asked the questions, right? We've got to drill down. Tom's obviously the expert, but he'll pull the numbers up and I'll say, explain to me the difference with each of these, and all of them are explainable.
You can see the same thing with police officer one. You have a lot of new hires in that category as well.
That's right.
Yes.
So it's driving that percentage down at the overall, but it's simply because we have a lot of new employees in that category.
Isn't that interesting? That's even after the significant increase you just voted on and we've actually implemented.
That's how many new officers we have on force.
That's right. And that's what brings it down. And the thing about it is when you say, the statistics that we gave you was that we estimated that we moved after our pay increases in July, we were at about a -3, about 3% behind market, the 2021 market. And then this methodology would move us to 2% before, or 2%
on average
above the market, the 2021. My point though is that you end up just averaging the individual salaries to get that composite, where we are competitively.
And I do want to remind you, it is 2021 numbers. So for example, where you see IT specialist, which is a really hard position to fill, any of you in business know that. If you, with all of the changes, you're showing yourself at 2% above market right there. I will tell you, you're not 2% above market because the market's already moved. But this was the best we could do with the 2021 data. And as you can see, it's a significant amount of money to move the employees to. But if we can get closer or close to the 2021 data, we feel like it'd certainly be a lot easier next year.
See, now this is the average salary.
Like for example, police officer one average salary. What does a starting salary look like for NCLM compared to what our starting salary
Next
looks
That's a good
like?
question,
Yeah,
sir.
we anticipated that, sir.
That's a funny one.
So the NCLM is starting on average 42. If you see that first column.
Yeah.
And then where we're at right now with the step is 43.5. And if you see the proposed, it hasn't changed because we haven't really, that is the new step.
What cities are in that cohort? Or how many?
There's about 26.
I think it's 26, and it's anyone between 24,000 citizens and 99,000
It's in
citizens.
that range of population.
Which includes, and we're one of the
We're one of
largest.
the largest in that grouping.
So that's when you agreed to focus on that as your peer cohort, and we'd love to continue to do that for many years. So we have a benchmark now we can work off of, and then let's target the average salary. I think if we stick to this methodology for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I think you're going to see that even if we had and do what you're saying, which is let's target that average salary and stay at it. Even if we did have another COVID situation, you're not going to see yourself having to catch up like this.
This is another good gauge of how to gauge the study and make sure that we're not way off whack when you start comparing because it's a little volatile when you're comparing average salaries, but if you can, look at those percentages on starting salary, we're pretty dead on after the 10% move. So, I mean, it's valid.
See, Tom drives through these numbers all the time, and he uses that, for example, when he classifies positions, and he looks at, he goes back to the information from the league survey and benchmarks a lot of different aspects of that. And it cautions him that, well, this doesn't quite look right. And he goes back and looks at whether the grade's right. Because sometimes when the salaries don't make sense to Tom, he says, well, it's looking like maybe that position's not graded right. And he goes back and looks at that. So he's back and forth in that. And this is good data for reference purposes. And that's why we promoted the idea of using the league survey data, because we know how it's collected.
Well, it's a large enough sample size, your data is accurate. You can make statistics say anything if you work from small sample sizes or cherry pick things. You ever hear somebody say you can justify anything out of the Bible if you take it out of context? The same thing happens with statistical data. If you don't have a large enough data set to validate and really make sure that you're pulling from a big sample and you have some consistency across that, you're really playing with fire. So I think the data set and the fact that it's validated data is huge. I think the methodology is sound. We're just having to bite the bullet of covering 10 years gap plus inflation at the same time. Next year, there'll be issues, but they won't be 10 years worth of issues. So we just kind of have to fill the gap, bite the bullet, fill the gap, get people where they need to be now, and then we can maintain that with less grief, if you will, in the pocketbook, because we won't be so far behind. We've got to get out from behind the 8 ball at this point.
Well, it is a big question, where's the money come from?
Well, I mean,
Taxpayers?
Yeah.
Short answer, taxpayers.
yeah.
Never forget that.
Yeah.
And we're here to share information right now, but yeah, some of it, when with the tax increase that was approved, there's a little bit of money that probably you can get from that tax increase. It doesn't cover that whole bill.
How much of it does it cover? Or do you have an approximate?
That's something we'll have to, we haven't actually counted. I just did my own little estimates. In other words, when the council increased the tax, basically we did in essence, 6 cents. So that's about $2.4 million in general. When we were talking about those pay increases, we talked about 1.6 for, I think, the police adjustments, and that included, that included 6% police adjustments and the 500.
So we're looking at $4.7 million, basically. I mean, you got to finance the benefits, right?
No, that's with benefits, it's
No,
2.1. So it's 2.1 without.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about, our benefits is about 25%.
So now it looks like a deal to you, doesn't
Yeah, it looks like
it?
You look at half.
What a savings.
It looks manageable now.
Maybe we should have communicated that better. Yeah.
This is part two. I mean, the public needs to know. So, maybe we're restating some things that we've heard before, but anybody who's listening to this conversation tonight or in the future, we're starting to see some calls coming in and questions arising as people are getting their tax bills because the evaluation changed the value of your home, so your taxes went up. We were not able to reduce the tax rate as low as to stay revenue neutral, and this is part of why. When we have city services that must be delivered, we want to, when I call 911, I want someone to respond to my home. I live in the city, my kids have gone to school here, my daughter's still in high school. There are things we want to know that we have access to, and my trash gets picked up every week. My yard waste does too. There are just things we enjoy in the city that these, they all require personnel to deliver. And when we're losing people at the rate we're losing people and having trouble filling positions at the rate we're having trouble filling them, as are any, businesses or industries pretty much nationwide, but certainly, we know our neighbors are having the same challenge. it put us in a situation where we cannot operate if we cannot staff these departments. And the folks who are here with us, you know, we want to keep them here with us. So that's part of why we're seeing the change in our tax bill. It may sting a little bit, and you know, we're at a 1/4-cent sales tax instead of a property tax. That would be lovely, but it's property tax, so it's the homeowners and the property owners who will see it and feel it the most. But we need these folks if we want to have a city that operates.
Now, what percent of that would come out of water and sewer or other funds? Other than general fund?
Well, I can just tell you, in general, budget-wise, for example, this year's budget, general fund salaries are about $33 million. Water and sewer salaries are about $5.8 million.
So 5.8.
Yes, and I think the next one is sanitation at about 2.5, and I think the next one is stormwater, and that's at 1.7, and then the internal service funds at 2.5. Well, it's a combination. Yeah, everybody
really
gets
is.
tapped.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Mhm.
You're right.
Yeah, and so that's the breakout, of this year's salary. It's set up. I mean, and again, intention wasn't today to get to a decision. It was to basically say, okay, here's some information. If we use this methodology, how do you feel about the methodology? What other questions do you have? We can go back and dig into, the business of, okay, how do you go about funding? And obviously, we're gonna have to go to fund balance, but that was one of the concerns.
That only takes care of this year. That doesn't address future. If you don't raise taxes to cover whatever we decide to pull out of fund balance, we're not gonna be able to fund continuing going forward and take care of future.
And then what that does too is just like we talked about, when you go into next year's budget, you start off with your salary discussion, so then it shapes some of the other expenses, what else you invest in. And it also, gets to how many employees do you have?
I feel like we gotta fix the problem we had in the past so we can move forward in the future.
Using fund balance this year does not fix the problem.
No, well, it helps.
Well, yeah, it kicks the can down the road another year, though.
Still gotta keep some of the people we have, though.
Yeah.
How many have we lost?
200 in the last year. There's
But
still 109 vacancies last time I heard, unless that number's true.
So what's the percentage?
We are now in double digits and just over 30% turnover.
And the average is 16
For the stage.
for turnover, so we're just about double.
Turnover for an organization.
I can get those numbers for you. I don't have them for you tonight. I know we showed them before, and at the time I showed you, I think we had just over 100 openings between part-time and full-time. We'd lost 200 people in that year. You're right, with our telecommunicators, we are losing. And of course, Mike has shared with you his police numbers. We're fortunate that we are seeing some uptick in applications, but I don't want to get overly enthusiastic about that. I think most of it is because, and several employees have contacted us because they have thought of leaving and they know we are having this conversation. So they're hopeful, they like the city, they want to work here, they're hopeful they're not leaving. So I will get those numbers and we can send that out to the entire group. Is that fine, sir?
Or bring it back for discussion again, obviously.
Yeah, see, those are performance measures that we need to agree. We're gonna look at periodically. We're gonna look at, okay, we made adjustments in pay. What impact has that been? I mean, those are all things that I think we all need to look at on a periodic basis to evaluate the effectiveness of our decisions.
I mean, I agree with Bob that, it's hard to finance things that recur with fund balance. I mean, that's a losing proposition right there, but you gotta remember, our fund balance is basically built on unused salaries over the years. You know, that's one other way of looking at that too. You know, that maybe our fund balance is at what percent? Anybody? General fund. That's a question.
Percent
I mean,
of our budget?
yeah, what are we at now?
Unrestricted.
Unrestricted fund balance.
I don't know right off the top of
Well,
my head. I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah, let me just talk about some of the history on salaries that we didn't spend, okay? In 2020, about $1.6 million was not spent from salaries. In 2021, it was $1.9 million. In 2022, it was $3.2 million.
We're still losing
While people are leaving, we're not paying.
Paying.
We're stockpiling the cash while people are leaving. That's a problem too.
Well, and I understand what you're saying, Bob, about
We need to have fun.
paying for it down the road and the tax issue, but it's the cost of doing business. We're always gonna have.
We've been
cover
paying
that.
for it.
Yeah.
We've been paying more than for
We've
it.
been paying
Do you know what
for
the
it.
cost is of training a new employee and having that employee leave and starting all over? I mean, one police officer is $100,000 worth of training. Now, it may not be exactly that high in every position, but if you've ever owned a small business and hired someone and had them leave 90 days or 180 days after they started, you gotta start over at square one with all of the training and all of the investment of time.
And equipment.
It's costing us more than the salaries in turnover. 30% turnover is gonna kill us.
It's 28%, Tom, thank you, just checked, and it's
Oh,
28% today, to date. So I was 2% off, I apologize.
28 still.
It's
I'm
only
close.
4% less than the double. So you're still double the
high.
average. The average is 16 and we're at 28.
We interview every day, all day long, and we're at Human Resources is at every interview. And every one of our team members sits in interviews all day long, every day, all week long, because we're trying desperately to get people in to fill Wally's positions, Mike T's positions. We're overwhelmed with trying to fill positions right now. So, our turnover has impacted our ability to be effective in every department.
And what's the current probationary status? Is it not 6 months now?
How long has it been, 6 months?
Ever since I've been here, 10 years I've been
It was
here.
90 days.
I thought at one point it was 90 days.
It was at one point, and there was a decision by council or the manager to increase it to 6 months because the 90 days was just not an adequate period of time to analyze whether an employee was gonna work out or not. So they needed to increase it, but anyway, for several years. And Kimberly, you've been here how long?
Do we need to go back and revisit that?
So,
I don't think so.
No, I don't, because what we're seeing is, you know, we don't lose that many employees after 6 months. But right now, we're losing them in
We're
days.
losing them.
You know,
but the probationary period is simply to see if they like you and you like them. There's no money tied to the 6 months. There's no benefit tied to the 6 months. They get their health insurance in 91 days.
You mean to see if you like their performance, right?
And
Or the
sure.
personality sits in their department.
The number of terminations that we've had during a probationary period are nominal. They're almost none.
Yep.
And that's the only thing, is whether or not you're gonna continue your employment or not.
Our biggest issue that I see with the data is when we track those people that clicks, right, to our positions, where before we would get hundreds and those hundreds would apply, now we get, 100 and only 20 are actually going in and applying. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but I shared them with you last time. And it's the click to, I know you have that too. It's the click to actually view ratio. And what happens is, typically when that happens, it's kind of an industry known fact. They're clicking on it, they're looking at the position and the salary. And if it's not what they expect, they click out. So we're not getting the applicants. So we've got to be more attractive. And that's why you see the scale move. The methodology that Tom put up is solid because it moves our entire scale 10%, not just the people in the position, but the scale as well. That makes us attractive at the front end. And then it keeps the people, last time we were here, you said, we want to make sure we're not losing the people that have been here for a long period of time, right? We're losing our institutional knowledge. It benefits those people that have put years of service into the city and also into their position, and it rewards them for that. So that methodology will work. We just have to figure out how do we do it.
What did you say the 6 cent equated to?
That was about $2.4 million. It's a little higher than
You
that,
said
but
1.6 was already allocated for raises and things that had gone in previously, so we're about 0.8 left, give or take.
it may be.
Rough numbers, rough.
Yep. See, and the other, well, of course, it doesn't help next year, but this is a full year. That's what it would cost for a full year.
It's annualized.
Yeah, so depending on when you implement it, you don't have to fund that much right now, but, you do have to then face it next budget year. Yeah, that's exactly right.
I would also take, and I don't have those numbers now, so I'm cautious to say this, but we all know that when you run businesses, you're paying overtime dollars.
Oh, yeah.
Where you're understaffed.
Overtime and the cost of turnover. That's the intangible. The cost of the retraining and the constant turnover.
And it's not gonna get any better. I mean, my first opinion is bite the bullet and move on with life, because, I mean, this is where we're at. I understand your concerns with taxes and going forward, but, I mean, for me personally, it's hard to sit here and talk about buying a firehouse and buying some other things and moving other decisions on. If we got people who are not gonna barely be able to fill them. And that's where I look at it. So, I mean, we can plan to do all these nice things down the road and have parks and have, fire stations and whatnot, but if we can't have the manpower to put them in there and take care of them and keep them up, what's the point? And I feel like that's where we're headed now, personally. So, I mean, I say we just write the check and move on with it. So.
I believe we're, that's, like I referenced earlier, we're kind of behind the 8 ball. We're gonna have to bite the bullet to close the gap and then regroup. We know it's coming again, but we're gonna be worse off next time if we don't do something there.
Where are we gonna be in relation to the different municipalities that's still in our people right now?
So they're part of that peer cohort for the most part.
Can you give us a list of that?
Sure, well, I'd be happy to send that to you. We had it up on the last one, I'll be happy to send that to you, yeah. You'll recognize them. We only know what they say they were gonna move. We don't know what they actually did until November. We can make some phone calls, but we promised that would not be valid. So we're waiting for that data in November to show. We know that they moved 5%. We know that. So if you consider that, that's another big number. We've run those numbers as well. But we can inch, right? This is the first big leap. And then after that, we'd like to be able to come back after we do this change, after we get the November numbers, and tell you where you sit against the market. And I'll go ahead and make sure you get that immediately tomorrow morning, if that's okay. Can I send that to everybody?
Somebody find me an accurate number of the unrestricted fund balance. I would like to see what that is at this point.
Get that back to you. Can we get it now? Is there a way to get it now? Or not really now? You can't get it now?
Well, I'm sure that, it's up to the council what they want to do at this point. Now, we can come back and talk about this when we get more information.
I'm kind of in Mr. Sosa's camp. We kind of know where we are. It's not going to get prettier.
You think that's the way we should go? I'm supportive of that.
I think if we're, caring community means, I understand it's tax dollars and it's going to hurt, and folks will not like it, and we won't like it either in terms of the cost of this. But part of caring community is also taking care of our people who work for us. It's not just the citizens, it's also our employees and our amazing staff that are, really busting their cases to provide the services that we enjoy in the city. So I think we got to be a caring community inward and outward. Not just outward.
We've already hurt ourselves by not paying that money into
Yes, we have. And
what we could have.
dollar signs we can't even measure.
Well, I'll make a motion to write the check and move on with life. so.
What is it?
I need to phrase that more carefully.
2.6. Yeah.
I mean, we just keep sitting here talking about it.
Yeah, I got you.
about it, So let's,
Second.
I mean, that's just how I feel
We'll
about it.
second that.
Do you need that worded in a particular fashion, or
Yeah.
can you improve upon that enough to get it in the record? Okay.
I know that we're required to maintain a certain level of fund balance at 8%. That's what LGC requires us to have. However, we know that 8% is not going to bail us out of a problem should we have like a major storm or whatever. So, you know, we want to make sure that we maintain a fund balance that's reasonable. We can't spend it. We can't spend it down, you know.
We gotta figure it out.
We got money borrowed against it also that we're paying back, right? How much is
So
that?
that would probably be in the restricted.
That's restricted now, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Well, if we've got almost $1 million left out of the tax change, we've got 0.8 roughly, maybe even it's 0.6, whatever it is, you got over $500,000 sitting there that you can deduct from that 2.6, which brings it back down to, 2 to 2.1, rough numbers, granted. I believe, I know, I don't have a current figure either, but I know in reviewing documents previously, we were well above the minimum, significantly. I don't think that we're going to be in danger of going below where we should. We will definitely have to be careful how we plan for future years to keep this going and make appropriate adjustments as we move forward. But, the motion on the floor is.
One more question before you go.
Go for it, sir.
Okay. All right, I asked a question a few minutes ago about the different funds, okay? The water and sewer fund, those people are paid out of that fund, right? Yes. Out of that money. So is that taking that into effect with that number there?
I'd like to see a little more information, guys. What's another couple weeks? Let's look at what we're really talking about from the unrestricted, and what are we talking about from the various other funds. I'm not as worried about water and sewer. I'm not worried about anything except the general fund. And the general fund comes from property taxes. I want to make sure that we're protecting that unrestricted. We spent $9 million. Y'all weren't here. We spent $9 million on Florence out of our pocket before we ever got the first dime back. So I know where Sammy's coming from. That's what he's trying to do. He wants to make sure we protect it. Well, guess what, guys? We don't have enough information. We know that we're well above, but we don't really know what the number is. And I'd like to know a little bit more.
I would suggest that we tap the brakes here.
I want to tap the brakes. I got to digest. I got to feel good that I can go look my taxpayers in the eye and say, this was justified and I'm fine with it.
But you also got to look at all these people that sit out here though.
Well, yeah, but we need our finance director here to give us some more information.
Well, then let's set a date and a time and let's just get it done and make a decision instead of.
When's the next meeting?
It's going to be on the 6th.
But we've been dealing with this crap forever.
We haven't been dealing with forever.
We have not been having pay issues for a long time.
How many employees have we lost since?
We've been putting it back.
Not dealt
That's
with.
the problem, yeah.
Yeah.
6th of September is our next
Let's
meeting.
look at
I want
that.
to let's put that on the workshop agenda. I want the finance director here and anybody else that has information as far as fund balance, anything that's outstanding that we don't know about, projects, we need to know that we borrowed up against when they're due. Just so that we have this financial information available to us, because right now, I agree with you guys, but the thing about it is, I want to make sure that we can sustain this. If we can't sustain it, there's no point in doing it. I mean, really.
To really have a motion and second on the floor, they would have to agree to take the motion and second off before you could delay it.
I'll resend it if we get some exact numbers and let's make a. I'm tired of just keep putting it off. So I'll resend it if we agree to make a date and let's get it done.
And don't forget also, when the county commissioners changed the tax distribution, we got hit and we're still continuing to be hit. So we had money coming back to us.
And they continue to hit us with employees.
Yeah.
And
Well, we can't-
regardless, we have not been paying employees, so that's why
We lose a
continuously
good
losing them.
$1.5 to $2 million every year to county
Shit.
when that tax distribution changed.
Well, September 6th is about 3 weeks away. The world's not going to crumble between now and then. But I think we do need to come back at that time, and we need to have the accurate, the information that's necessary to make the decision of which way we go. And again, like I said, I need the finance director here with fund balance, the money, okay? So that we know exactly, what we're gonna do. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
As a strategy? We do realize, I mean, I'm a former city employee. I sympathize with the employees of the city. I mean, I've been in their shoes and I know exactly what the deal is, but, at the same time, we got to make sure that the city is gonna be in good shape if we take this
I
action.
totally
okay?
understand, and I'm good to wait till the 6th, but the reality is we've been saving money by not paying employees.
I agree.
And now we're biting the bullet.
I agree. I wanna see it right, okay?
Yeah.
Well, let's do that on behalf of
Okay?
That's it for this discussion.
Thank you, folks. I appreciate it. I appreciate the effort you're putting into this.
So we need to get you a list of all those in our peer cohort. You just also asked how many people we've lost in the last 30 days.
Right.
We'll get some
And then-
applicant kind of
And then by the time we
information
get to
in
the
that.
6th as well.
Will you be able to break out the 2.6, what would come out of water, sewer, et cetera, between now and
That's a
then?
finance.
That's the finance.
Yes.
Okay, you'll be able to do that, so that'll be helpful when we get the unrestricted fund balance. So, is there anything else, Mayor?
I want the water and sewer and anything else that's paid as far as employee pay, where it's coming from, okay? If there's money coming out of stormwater for
Yes,
fund,
We'll break this down, but
Yeah.
somebody with a
Right.
2.6. And give you the exact figure.
I don't think the service funds matter, or just,
Well, it ends up being an
It comes out of
expense
that.
for the other funds.
Yeah.
It's not a salary expense, but it's a
I
cost
don't
that you
think
can't.
inter-service would matter that much. But
Anything
The
else?
enterprise funds do, so.
Anything else that Councilor or Mayor would want, so we can make sure we have the complete, accurate, and complete information?
Anybody?
I think we covered it all.
That
Should we
should
get
tell
the
us
slides, too?
what piece of this is
Copy of the
covered and what
slides.
piece of this is not.
Sure.
Where we stand against it.
It'd be interesting to know, I know we finished the year, and we haven't had the audit, but it would be interesting to have updated, the unrestricted instead of
An indication of what's
Yeah,
happening.
what is it approximately?
What was the question?
What the fund balance is. There's a number, but it's, that number right now is assuming we were gonna spend a certain amount last year, and that's still tied up in there. And so that's part of, looking a little closer as to where the end of the year is looking like.
Would like updated with the best available information, even if it's not completely accurate, just best available.
It's not audited.
Not verified.
Okay, so I think we know where we're going, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Reports.
What was that? Was there a slide? We got a slide.
Well, that's just a what if. That's
If the
what we
market
talked
moved
about.
5% or 10% or 15%.
If the market,
More bad news.
More bad.
It is bad news, guys.
We can't control the market.
Oh, I'm not blaming y'all.
Yeah.
I'm
If
not.
the market moves 5%, which we know it did, it would be an additional 2.5 million. That's not with benefits.
but again, like I said, what's important right now about this step we're talking about is getting the employees positioned where they should be equitably, doing as much as we can about compression and getting us as competitive as possible. And then, once we're established that way, then you start looking at, okay, how much can we afford, to close the gap as we go forward? Because
These market increases are being driven by inflation too, correct? And we know that inflation does not recognize the law of gravity, right?
And typically, the market for a municipality or local governments is not this volatile. It has been in the last year because of inflation. So we're not dealing with this all the time.
He's just saying what goes up doesn't always come down.
It ratchets up. That's right.
Anything else you need from us?
Thank you. All right, so we got some reports, and I'll start with Councilmember Ward.
No, nothing, no good news to
No, just, I mentioned, on Thursday, August 25th, the Montford Point Marine Memorial Observation is 8 o'clock in the morning, and that is open to the public, and there's some other events going on that weekend. If the public is interested in learning more, they can contact the association. Thursday, August 25th.
And that's the 80th year? It's the 80th anniversary.
80th anniversary.
Of the Montford Point Marines. It's a big observance.
Silent drill team will be there in the morning.
Commandant's
Presidential commendation being awarded, I believe. So it's going to be quite the affair.
No, I did see was it XY was going to be not for 70 years of service or something like that. That's pretty impressive. So I just
Still kicking in November.
I remember him yelling at me when I was going to elementary school. So
November, he'll be 95 years old.
that's amazing. I hope I can be doing that at that age. So I thought that was worth mentioning.
Still, it's like a Timex, right?
Yeah.
So they can keep on ticking. It's something else.
Yeah.
All right, I don't have anything either, Mr. Massey.
Sure. The main thing I want to cover is some one city. And that's, a month or so ago, I had mentioned the fact that stormwater was being recognized for the cleaning, removal of the boats out of the river, the derelict and abandoned boats. And the team received the Pelican Award just last weekend from the environmental. Yes, the Coastal Federation, and that was a good recognition for the team and the effort. Of course, council, changed the ordinances to allow that to happen, and it certainly was the right thing to do.
And how many boats they've got rid of? Approximately.
I think we're on
double digits.
Yeah, I was going to say something like 16 or that, but we'll go back and double check that. But that was a good thing to do. And one other thing that I need to mention is that there's annual Jag Grant that's given off by the Department of Justice. The city gets, there's funds identified a certain amount. This year was $22,168, and we usually buy some equipment with it. This year the plan is to buy a mobile camera system that allows you to go and set up camera for observation, in areas where you got activities going on that you want to kind of gain more information. But the grant needed to be submitted today. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to get that money. It doesn't require a local match, so I went ahead and submitted the grant. It's not, we'll come back for council to accept in that, but we didn't have permission before I did that. But I just beg your forgiveness, and and you can make your decision when we get notified about the grant. But I didn't want to miss that opportunity, and so true confessions.
It was good for the soul.
I can sleep at night.
That's all I have.
By the way, he just whispered. He says, "I feel better now."
All right, so we'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Carter.
Report, remember on August the 3rd, you had Mr. Anthony Pickett, who appeared before you at, I think it's 109 Market Street. He was cleaning that property off. He has fully abated that. That's why you did not see it back on your agenda tonight. I just want to report that.
He did all that with his family.
Him and his family, without use of our trailers, he did it all.
We're able to help him a little bit.
Thank you. That's my
Anybody
motion.
else? Okay, with that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?